Hello, Professor Strickland. This is our video about the presentation of the material that we decided to adapt. So we based ourselves on material that we have worked before, which is the material from Tromwell's Institute, and we focused on one specific lesson. We're going to start by describing the context of the institute. Tromwell is an institution that has several branches along the country, and the system is focused on communicative approach. So it's divided. When students start the program, they have some lessons at the laboratory where they study the grammatical aspects, and then they can go to the conversation classes in which they put into practice what they have learned from the labs. In the Institute, there are 7 levels that are more or less based on the Common European Framework, and we decided to focus on the BIM, which is Beta Intermediate level, and it would be something like B1 in the Common European Framework. In the Institute, the lessons last 45 minutes each, and we receive an amount of students from 1 to 8 as maximum per class. They can go whenever they want, and their ages go from 15 onwards. So there is a huge variety of different ages. And the frequency in which they go can be once a week, once a month, every day, as they wish. It's their option. So we decided to focus on one of the lessons of this module that was one of the most important ones, that it's about the use of zero and first conditional. And we decided to focus on this one because several details that we're going to explain later, but also and most importantly because it's one of the key grammatical aspects that they are asked to go to the next level, and we consider that it was a little bit weak. So that's it.
Okay. Hello, Professor. We're going to start with the explanation of the original version of the PowerPoint. So the original PowerPoint is this. If you see, it has a logo of the institute, it has the title of the module and the number of the topic. After that, we have the title, and then we start right away with the explanation of the conditional. But we don't like this slide because it only provides one option of the structure. It doesn't include like the 2 possible orders of the clauses. It only includes the definition of zero conditional as general truths. So it doesn't talk about the possibility of using zero conditional for habits, for example, or for example, routine. So we included that later in the new version of the PowerPoint. And also, we don't like some of the examples of the PowerPoints because they are not attractive or they are not close to the reality of our students. In the case of the first one, it says, if it rains, I will stay at home. Maybe if it is weekend, on the weekend, they will do it, but most of our students work or study, so they don't have that option. And also, we criticize the slide because it includes like only one version of the questions normally. In this case, I think it's only yes or no questions. So we also included open questions in the part of the examples and as a modeling as well. And then if we go to the first activity, if you see this activity, you will notice that it asks students to create the 2 types of conditionals for the same sentence, which for us is not so authentic, is not engaging, is very monotonous in general. So what we decided to do was to divide this activity. So we adapt this activity by subtracting some elements. First of all, because they are many, they are like 6 or 5 sentences in this slide, but we also have a second slide, and we also, besides subtracting exercises, we also abridged them because we separated them into first conditional and second conditional. And besides that, we also changed some examples, because if you look at the first picture, it's a very shocking picture about obesity, and if you analyze other examples, they are not so attractive, or they are like not really they are offensive, inappropriate in some cases. So for example, outdated, with the thing of the yellow fingers, that people smoke and they have yellow fingers. So we decided to change some examples. And then we go to this slide. In general, it's good. It's a good slide, but we changed some examples because we decided that some of them were not so useful and so challenging for them. So we decided to include different structures in the exercises, and we add more. No problem. In this activity, the only negative aspect we saw was the last picture with the lady that apparently sunbathed too much. So we decided to eliminate that picture and add a new one. And we also included some hints, because if you see this exercise, there is no help for the students. In general, it shouldn't be a problem, but sometimes we have students that are very tired, or they are lacking some vocabulary. So in case that happens, and in order not to wait so much, we decided that could be an improvement of this slide. And then the next slide is about these pictures. In general, most of them are not so bad, but some of them are blurry. Some of them are inappropriate. For example, the one that is a lady that is slapping a man, or for example, the joke or the prank. So we decided to adapt them and to choose more appropriate pictures and more attractive pictures for our students. And we also decided to include some hints. And finally, this is the last slide of the topic, and it's an online link. The link is for exercises about the first conditional only, and it's a long list of first conditionals. So we thought that it wasn't really a good exercise, and it was too limited. So in general, that is the structure of the PowerPoint at Tronwell. We also changed the format of the template because we think it's too plain, and well, the link is not opening, but if you click on it, you will see the type of exercises that includes.
Yeah. Okay. Let me change. Okay, and that's the end of the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, and keep practicing, which is the typical closure that Tronwell gives to the.
Yeah, we encourage students to practice outside, even though sometimes it's not so common.
Yeah. Okay, but here you can take a look to the exercises that were suggested. Sorry. But it's a very long list of exercises, and all of them are filling in the gaps, which is a little bit monotonous, as we said before, and we didn't like it. And another thing that we didn't really like or consider that was a little bit, well, it wasn't enough, was that this was the material, like the extra material that they have
on the Tronwell platform.
a Drumwell platform to practice. It's just one page using just the first conditional, and it includes the uses of going to as well, which
Yes.
are not explained anywhere, not neither in the platform nor in the classes, but are in the additional material. And they do not include any kind of explanation either, so we consider that it's a little bit poor in terms of explaining the content. So what we decided to do was to create, based on this one, a new PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so this is the new presentation, or the one that we adapted. It keeps the format in terms of the number of the session that we kept, and we shortened a little bit the name of the class, because we considered that the first part wasn't so necessary. First thing is that we changed all the template because we wanted to make it more attractive. Other thing or other aspect that we consider important was to add visual aids or more visual input, that it's important these days and that it's a little bit more close to students' reality, considering the high amount of students, of young students that Drumwell receives every day. So we added these two comics. Additionally, we added a short clip from the Simpsons series, which is here. If you click the picture, you will see it and it will pop up in a YouTube tab.
The idea is to show that conditionals are part of our daily life.
Exactly. And also, we decided first to start with an explanation or definition of what a conditional is, because most of the time, or one of the questions that we usually received was that students didn't understand what a conditional was. So you had to go part by part, but they could get the general idea, but sometimes they needed to read like a very concrete explanation. And we thought that this one, that it's very short and yet very important, could make more sense for them.
Especially for adults.
Yes. We also decided to show from the very beginning that a conditional can switch the order and still have the same meaning, which is something that the previous presentation didn't have. Then we went with the zero conditional, the first one. We decided to erase all, not all, but some of the animation that it had because it was more distracting. So we went part by part. First, we present the structure and a little description of what do we use it for. Then we present more examples that are a little bit more appealing for the students than the previous ones. And we also included the two types of questions, the closed question and open questions. Because in the previous slides, in the previous presentation, they just had one.
And also the verb to be.
And also the verb to be, yes. And also here, we presented all the uses that it can have. So we presented, again, more examples, like the uses, the examples, and in both order. And we did more or less the same with the first conditional. Again, the structure for the people that need to have a structure, and then some examples.
With different colors.
Yes. And yes, with colors to identify like the parts of the sentence, so they can have very clear that, okay, this first part is the condition and this is the consequence. And then the same, we presented the uses, we presented more examples in both order.
And both questions, open and close.
Yes. And then we started with the activities. This is the one that we decided to like divide. So in this way, we use both subtracting and abridging. Abridging because we decided just to keep the first slide with the zero conditional and not with both. And subtracting because we decided to put less exercises. Instead of 5, we just kept 3. We changed the first one for more obvious situations or things that they could relate more easily. And then we also decided to add the answers because that's something that sometimes the students needed or asked for, so we had to write it on the board, well, on the notepad, and it was
time consuming.
Yeah, time consuming. And here is the same. We divided or separated from the first one. If you notice, we changed the examples, so we avoided all the difficult or kind of offensive examples that it could have for more real ones with real possibilities, but again, less exercises, and again, we decided to add the answers.
Yeah, because what normally happens is that we take too long to do these slides in the original PowerPoint because it's very demanding for students to learn two different conditionals and to remember also the conjugation of the simple present. So in the end, we end up writing everything on the notepad and it takes a long time.
Yes, it's true. And here we decided to add new exercises. The original exercise was very similar, but the kind of humor or the style that implied was very difficult. For instance, the first example said something about if you passed the test, but if you took a look at the picture, you could see that it was a drug test. So even though for some people it might be fun, some other people can feel confused, and it's not really correct to use those kind of examples in a classroom. So we decided to keep it like more formal, at least in this part. And the examples also encourage the students to notice the use of simple present, which is something that they sometimes forget when they get to this level. And then we go to the next slide. If you notice, they are more or less the same examples that the original slide had, but we changed the last one for a more suitable one, and we also added some keys regarding vocabulary in case they didn't know the vocabulary or they didn't remember, to avoid these long waits and to make students feel uncomfortable, which happens very often when they don't know a word or they forget a word.
Or they are tired.
Yes. They can come to any time they want, so sometimes people get very early in the morning or very late in the evening, and that happens a lot. And then we went for first conditional again, and we did more or less the same, including more real situations. We avoided the use of violence in the exercises, so we took out the picture of people hitting each other or the pranks and all that, and we put situations that were more appealing not only for adults but also for young people who usually can face these situations. And if you notice, we also added the vocabulary. Then in this activity, we decided to add it because we noticed that all the activities previously were a little bit guided. So this one is a little bit more open. In here, they have to decide whether these situations are likely or unlikely. If they are likely or they are like always like that. So they have to decide if they are zero conditional or first conditional. And here they also have the chance to talk, because we also discuss about it, and students in this kind of lessons just like complete and fill in the gaps, but they never have a real chance to communicate or express their way of thinking.
Freely.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So what we wanted here was for them to express their opinion and talk a little bit more about why they think these situations were always like that or were just a possibility. If you notice, we again added the vocabulary to help them a little bit to create sentences. It doesn't mean that this is the only option, but we wanted to give some alternatives.
We normally use these hints when they don't know what to answer and it takes too long for them to answer. So we give them the chance to think first. But if nothing comes to their mind, then we give them some hints.
That's the reason why they do not appear immediately, but you have to click on the slide for them to appear. And then if the students feel that that's too easy, we'll have like the continuation of that activity. But this is like a follow-up, but it doesn't have the vocabulary, but the sequence of the images is a little bit more clear. So they can create the same kind of sentences saying that if it's likely or if it's always like that, and saying if it's zero or first conditional, but without any vocabulary help. And then we also decided to add this resource that is lyrics training, which is more for the listening comprehension, but we also think that it's another engaging way to make students notice the structure of zero and first conditional and how useful they are and how easy it is for us to find them in everyday language. So we put 3 different examples of very well-known songs that they can go and play there. We wanted to use them into the class, but you can click on them so you will see the different examples that we've got. And additionally, we created more material because, as we said before, the material that Tonwell offers is not very specific, or not. It doesn't provide all the contents needed. So we created a Google Forms evaluation so they can do it at home. And we also created a handout that they can download and do at home as well. And then they can check the correct answers at the institute. And to finish, we added this example, which is another comic that also includes the first conditional. The idea from this is like to assess if students were able or not to internalize the structure and to see if they can understand what this means, like the use of this and the condition that it implies. And finally, we added a Likert scale to kind of also have feedback from students to know if the explanation was clear enough, or if they are still confused, or if they didn't understand anything and they need more practice. So in all these ways, depending on their answers, we can guide them better. So that's it.
Okay, so now if we think about the affordances and the constraints of our adaptation, the first thing we can say is that PowerPoints are sometimes very tricky, right? They, when we copy a PowerPoint from one computer to the other, maybe the configuration of the settings of the PowerPoint can change. You can have problems with the video sometimes that they don't open, or of course you need a computer, you need a projector. In the case of the Institute, we have those things in each room, but technical difficulties can always appear, right? So those are constraints. Also, in the case of the Google Form test, a constraint is that you need a Gmail account, so you have to log in to have access to the test. But an affordance of the test is that you receive immediate feedback because the test has the key included, not while they are doing the test, but afterwards when they finish. And another affordance of that test is that you can receive statistics about all the answers of your students, so you can see where they normally make mistakes, and then you can prepare something to repair that. Now, if we think about the affordances of our PowerPoint, we will say that it has more attractive, more engaging exercises, that they are closer to our students, and for that reason we are going to be able to increase the level of motivation and participation in our classes. We have a variety of exercises. We expanded the kind of exercises, and we also extended some of them to allow them to practice in different situations, with some guidance, with some modeling, and with no modeling. So the idea is to challenge them as well. In relation to the comics, for example, and the videos, we know nowadays that visual input and multimodality is also very important for students learning in general, because we are in the generation or the new era of technology. So it's very familiar for them to see pictures and comics and videos, and they feel more comfortable sometimes when they are in front of them. So as you can see, we decided to adapt this PowerPoint because exercises in general were too monotonous. So we decided to expand the variety of them. We also decided to subtract some examples or exercises because they were too time-consuming. And since the aim of the Institute is communicative approach, we encourage them to speak with follow-up questions according to their level, of course.
Yes, we also use a bridging for separating and for making it a little bit more specific for them, at least at the beginning, so they wouldn't be confused and they wouldn't mix both structures or have any problem at the moment of using them. And
also, if you think about the original examples of pictures that were like offensive or that were inappropriate, since we have a variety of students, adults, teenagers, it's very important not to, I don't know, create, yes, or create like a tense environment in the class. So for that reason, we decided that it's very important to eliminate those things.
Yeah. And well, that's it. That has been our presentation. I hope you have liked our modifications, and we decided to do it in order to benefit students from all the changes that we made. So that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Bye.